part two. Part two is going to be relatively short. I'm only going to do 8 slides, I think it is. I'm just trying to get to slide number 20. Where we at? Okay. I already did this one. So yeah, 7 slides until freedom. All right, culture and politics in East Asia. In both China and Japan, economic growth supported elite and popular culture. So once again, that economic growth is going to come from all of the expansion that the Europeans are doing into the new the new world, or the Americas, and they're going to in turn bring back silver, and they're going to be able to trade into those Asian markets, because the Asian markets require that you use silver. Even though China is where we develop flying cash from, they don't trust cash because it's not backed by an actual material or a mineral. So they are only going to trust silver, which is why as the Americas are mined for their silver and Europe becomes more enriched with silver, China and India and all of East Asia by default, East Asia is going to benefit from America's slavery, essentially. We're going to eventually increase connectivity. Increasing connectivity led to circulation of ideas as well as goods. We'll see that happening all over the place. So once again, as I trade with you, I get to know you, I learn your culture, I exchange my culture with your culture, and then everyone grows and thrives as well. Okay? So the trade market is more than just a market for goods, it's a market for languages, for cultures, for religions, for diseases, for ideas and things like that. So we're going to see China is going to challenge the expansion and diversity. The challenge of expansion and diversity, okay? So the challenge, all right, it's going to be a challenge for China to maintain their control over the culture, over their country, over their borders, over their walls, and things like that, and their autonomy as well. So we're going to see sources for cultural flourishing came primarily from within China. So China is still super cut off from the world, and they they are very much like the Mughal Empire. They are not looking to Europe for ideas. I think they're also kind of barbarian and kind of rude. So they're looking inward because they feel like they are the only ones that matter. So we're going to see circulation of books. That is where we at, the circulation of books. All right, and the domestic market helps circulate ideas within China. Let's see if it talks about the printing press. Yep, that's coming up next. Okay. But anyway, we'll see circulation of books, how that's going to change, religious rituals, how that's going to change, and advances in cartography. What does cartography mean? Hopefully, you guys are saying map making, okay? Map making, because originally when we're going to look at what China does with their maps, China's maps are not like everybody else's, and that's not a good thing during this time period. Yes, it's coming up. It's coming up. All right. Will I get to it in time? Hopefully. So we're on slide number 14. We just have 6 more to go. Publishing and the transmission of ideas. China's increased commercialization led to the widespread decentralized book production, and no centralized system of censorship. So we know that China today is much stronger. They censor things. They control things. But back then, they're going to, because of the commercialization, and because the commercialization of China was done outside of government control, because the government did not want to officially sanction trading, because they did not want to officially allow Europeans into their country. As a result of that, we're going to have a lot of the book, or the decentralization of the state is going to happen because of trade, and as a result of that, it's going to allow the book market to flourish and to thrive. So a lot of books that had previously not been in China are going to be translated into Chinese, and then spread out to a wide variety of people. Some of these ideals are going to bring in some European concepts about fairness, about loyalty, about respect, about things like that, that the typical Chinese society has not had to deal with during this time period. So by the late Ming era, Ming once again means brilliant, and Qing means pure. Okay, Ming is brilliant, Qing is pure, excuse me. We're going to see the publishing sector is going to cater to a diverse needs of educated elites and urban populations. We're going to see steady age from civil service examinations. We can say that when you guys have SAT prep books, that's going to be an example example of one of these, or even your ANSCO book could be considered an example of a study aid used for an exam that's going to help you guys pass, okay? And we're going to see that as people start to read books, where is it? All right, so, in 1595, we have a plagiarism case that's going to create a scandal in Beijing, and what we will see is that ironically, on page 529, ironically then, the increased circulation of knowledge led critics to bemoan a decline in real learning. Instead of mastering the classics, they charged examination candidates were simply memorizing the work of others. That's a very, very important line on 529. I hope you guys check that out. So once again, they feel like because there are so many books printed with the same information, people aren't original anymore. They lost that originality because all of their ideas are coming from somebody else, and they're not really learning. They're just memorizing things and then telling you or regurgitating it, which can sometimes be seen as a problem today in modern day education systems. This was going on in 1595, and we might still say it's a problem today in 2019. So we're going to see elite women join literary cultures as readers, writers, and on rare occasion, publishers. So we see that a lot of times in Chinese society, women have more rights in general than women across the world. So even though they're not necessarily all the way considered a part of society and culture for a number of reasons, we'll talk about Chinese foot binding in a second, but they are going to, at least for the literary world, be allowed to join in on that. So ironically, the thriving publishing sector, as it published books supporting conservative attitudes, indirectly promoted the stricter morality and restriction for elite women. Here we go with the foot binding. So if you guys look on page 532, there is an example of a woman, a Chinese woman whose foot has been bound together when she was a child. Basically, foot binding was supposed to make women appear more dainty, and it made women have to rely on men, which is what the society wanted. Very patriarchal, very much needing men and not so much supporting women. So if a woman needs a man to go everywhere, to carry her everywhere, to do things for her, then she is going to be subservient to that man, which is where most times during this time period, people wanted the women to be below the men, and so forth. And we'll see how that is going to impact women. Another thing that we have, just talking about the geishas yet. Let's see where the geishas are. I know I underlined about the geishas, and I cannot find it right now, but I will. Okay, so, alright. People, popular culture, and religion. So we're on slide number 16, I think it is, 15, I'm getting ahead of myself. People in Ming China who were not able to read absorb cultural values through oral communication, rituals, and daily practices. So even though the amount of literacy that we have in China during this time period is on the rise, there is still a lot of people out there who do not know how to read and will not learn how to read. And so they have to embrace or rely on other cultural traditions to assist them in acquiring culture, acquiring knowledge, including oral traditions of storytelling and things like that, doing rituals and daily practices that have been done for centuries, generations. As with a lot of other places, we're going to see that, especially Chinese places, we're going to emphasize ancestors and that culture that they bring. So we have villagers honoring guardian spirits, patronizing Buddhist and Taoist temples, and watch performances by touring theater groups. So we'll see how culture is thriving and changing as a result of that. This is the Japanese side. There we go. All right, so at the grassroots level, there was little distinction among Buddhists, Taoists, and local cults. So basically, we couldn't figure out who you were on a grassroots or a low level. Everyone is generally treated the same. The Chinese believed in cosmic unity, and although they celebrated spiritual forces, they did not consider any of them to be the supreme being who favored one sect over another. Run that back. So once again, even though the Chinese are going to support, it's right here and I'm reading it for no reason, they're going to support people having a spiritual base and a spiritual center. What's more important to them is not what religion you are, what religion you have, but yet it's going to be that the the ruler or the emperor is going to have the mandate of heaven. So as long as he has God behind him, he is superior, he is number one. It doesn't matter whether you're Buddhist, Taoist, or some other cult that they have in this area. So the emperor had no reason to regulate spiritual practices and tolerated diverse beliefs. The only reason why the emperor would step forward in any of these spiritual practices or cultural or diverse beliefs is if they threatened his mandate of heaven or threatened his power, and then he would have to come down and regulate that area. But unless you're doing that, I mean, if you're not doing that, you have nothing to worry about, no issues at all whatsoever. If you are challenging his mandate, you have lots to fear. All right, technology and, advances in cartography. So technology and cartography. Chinese invented new technologies to master nature's operations in the world. So we know the three things that are most important. I can even add a fourth thing up there, but I guess technology is only three. So magnetic compass, gunpowder, and printing press are the three most important technological inventions that were created in China. Flying money is also another invention, but it's not technological per se, okay? So these three things are going to continue to be very, very important throughout history. They're still important today, and they all came from one place, okay? The emperor's job as the son of heaven and mediator between heaven and earth drove their technologies into astronomy and calendrical sciences. So accurate records of eclipses, comets, novas, and meteorites. So for one, they had to this day still one of the most accurate one during this time period. Having the accuracy allowed them to keep their mandate of heaven. Without the accuracy, it just makes it seem like that God is not on their side, does not have that mandate of heaven, and therefore the people should not support that leader. So they almost had to learn about all of these tools and technologies because if they would not control the areas. But with that being said, they were very, very specific and very, very on point and in tune with what they were doing. So European missionaries tried to impress the Chinese with their astronomy and cartography. So here's the thing. The Chinese maps still show that the earth was flat. Flat earth. And not just that, Chinese maps had China in the center of the earth and everything else spreading out around that. So European missionaries come in, they're going to show them like, hey, look at the map. It's new. It shows you the world is round and not flat. It shows you that, look at where China is compared to the rest of the world. Well, the Chinese thinkers and officials were not really happy with that. They were like, yo, bro, we not the center. The world is circle. So they were just not okay with that, and they disregarded a lot of what the Europeans were saying. But the Europeans, though, they made modifications. They were like, well, China wants to be closer to the center. Let's move China to the center a little bit more. So they're going to modify the map. Chinese are still not going to be impressed with the map, okay? So, despite a long history of contact with the world, the Chinese had limited knowledge about foreign lands and did not feel compelled to revise their views of the world during this time period. So the earth stays flat, China's in the center, and nothing changes because they're not willing to embrace or take on those European ideals. Alright, cultural identity in Tokugawa, Japan. So, I talked about Tokugawa in the previous chapter, we're going to talk about it again. Culture drew on local traditions and foreign influences from Europe and China. So Japan is like kind of by itself. Let's find Japan. All right, this really nice island right here is going to be Japan. You guys can't see that, but hopefully you guys know what Japan looks like. And so Japan, because of its location right next to China, China is obviously going to be one of the major influences for it, but also they're going to have European influence as well. They're going to embrace native arts and popular culture, and until the 17th century, the imperial court, the shogunate, religious institution, and the small upper class were the patrons of Japanese culture. We have elite culture of theaters and stylized paintings, and the samurai and the daimyo favored mass theater and tea-making rituals. All right, and so with this, let's see if it's going to pop up. I don't think so. So I'll talk about it right now. All right. So one thing that's also happening during this time period in Japan is that we have two distinct cultures arising in Japan. So one is going to be with elites full of elegance, and there's going to be another one that's going to be rougher and more urban with artisans and merchants. So we're going to see two distinct Japans arriving during this time period. Boom, and as I said that, it is right there, okay? And so the rougher one is gonna work with fiction. They're gonna have works of fiction. They're gonna have geishas, or female shamisen entertainers. So basically they're gonna be seen as kind of like prostitutes in ways, and just women who are entertaining men, okay? And the kabuki, theater that combines song, dance, and stage with brilliant costumes. Let's see if they have any examples of that. Well, you have a picture of a geisha on page 534, so you guys can see that. And we're on slide number 16 at the moment. 16, 18, wow. All right, number 18, just 2 more to go.